If you go into any gym, anytime, you'll typically see people wearing the same sort of fitness clothing. Clothing made by brands that have been established for decades. They've spent billions of dollars on advertising. Companies like Nike, Adidas, Puma, Reebok, Gymshark. Yeah, because since 2012, Gymshark has gone from basically a couple of guys in a garage sewing labels onto t-shirts to a genuine heavy hitter in one of the world's most competitive apparel markets, sportswear. They've gone from zero to an estimated turnover in excess of £150 million. They've done this with no funding. And the founder of the company was 19 years old in 2012. This is one of the greatest business growth stories of our generation, and pretty much just using this. And they're just getting started. My name's Tim Cameron Kitchen, and I'm head ninja at a digital marketing agency called Exposure Ninja. Now, we love reverse engineering growth stories of businesses like Gymshark to find out how they've done it. And in this video, we're going to do exactly that. I'm going to show you the marketing that has helped Gymshark to go from zero to over £150 million in revenue. We're going to look at how their website has evolved over time. We're going to take a look at their social media, particularly looking at how their use of influencer marketing has really kind of defined or redefined that category. We're going to take a look at SEO, what they're doing with pay-per-click ads, and we're going to put it all together into some lessons that you can learn if you're looking to tap into some of that ridiculous growth for your business. So buckle up, sit back, and enjoy. Now, Gymshark's first year in business was 2012, so their first full year of accounts is from 2013. And if we take a look at what their retained earnings were over the years, we can see just how rapidly the company has grown. And retained earnings is the amount of money that the company keeps after paying dividend to shareholders. It's basically money that is retained by the company over time. So retained earnings at the end of year one were £90,000, which is a reasonable first year. By the end of year two, this had jumped to £1.17 million, which is a pretty good second year, and it shows just how dramatically Gymshark's growth was as soon as they got started. By year three, this had risen to 1.9 million, year four, 2.6 million, year five, this jumped dramatically to over 9 million, and by year six, it jumped dramatically again, this time to over 23 million pounds. Now, we don't know what Gymshark's revenue was over the first 2 years of the business, but we do know that by year three, that revenue was 8.7 million pounds. Now, many businesses, it takes them, a very long time to get to that sort of revenue. So clearly Gymshark, something happened in that first couple of years. I'm going to show you exactly what that thing was a little bit later on. Meanwhile, revenue in year four jumped to 12.7 million. Now, revenue in year five grew to over 40 million, and revenue in year six past 103 million. Now, at the time of making this video at the tail end of 2019, Gymshark haven't yet submitted their full year accounts for year seven, but it would be a very conservative estimate that put their revenue at anything less than, say, 160 to 200 million pounds. Now, these sorts of growth numbers are insane. We're used to seeing tech companies with overinflated valuations based on desperate investors piling cash into a business that isn't yet profitable. But what we're talking about here is a real profitable business that is making money, selling physical product. You've got to sell a lot of t-shirts to get to over 103 million pounds in revenue, and the growth continues. In 2016, Gymshark was named the #1 fastest growing retailer in the UK, and also topped the Sunday Times Fast Track 100 this year. And of course, the brand has millions of followers across all its social media channels as well. So how has all of this happened in such a relatively short space of time? Well, the first thing we're going to do is go back to the very early days of Gymshark to see how the business was founded and how they chose, in particular, the sportswear market to go after. Suffice to say, we wouldn't be talking about Gymshark today if Ben Francis had decided to start a typewriter business. Gymshark was one of 7 different websites that Ben was running at that time. First version of Gymshark actually sold supplements, but Ben realized that the margin on supplements wasn't very good, so moved over into clothing. And the first version of the Gymshark clothing website actually sold lots of different brands of clothing which they'd import, as well as Gymshark's own brand. So what was the fitness clothing market like at the time that Gymshark was founded? Well, the story goes that gym goers really had two choices. They could either wear baggy kind of ill-fitting clothing designed for bodybuilders, or they could have more expensive kind of performance-focused clothing which wasn't necessarily designed to look good. So what Ben and his co-founder really wanted to do was design a range of more fitted clothing which kind of made people look good, but you could also work out in it. Now, Ben talks a lot about making the sort of clothing that he wanted to wear, and actually this is the first lesson in the Gymshark story. Ben repeatedly talks about himself as the target audience, and really he was. He was 19 years old, gym goer, wanted this sort of more fitted clothing, so pretty much the first version of the product was designed for people just like him. And one of the things I noticed as I was researching this is that throughout a lot of Ben's interviews, he talks about designing the events that he would want to go to. He talks about designing the clothing that he would want to go to, the app that he would want. Really, he is the audience. The founder of the business is the audience. And that gives him great power because he understands what his audience would want. So the Gymshark team designed a range of fitted clothing that looked good, and they sold it at an affordable price that actually young people would be able to afford. This was their breakout product. This is the Luxe tracksuit. This shot is also taken from Gymshark's Instagram in the very early days. And here we see a couple of bodybuilders. This is Jeff Seed and some other massive fatty wearing those Gymshark Luxe joggers. It's important to note this is in the very early days of Gymshark. These are two fitness influencers. We'll come back to the importance of influencer marketing. But even from these very early days, we can see from looking through the comments to these posts, the product was a direct hit with the audience. People were raving about these joggers. They really, really wanted the joggers. As much as it might seem like a basic thing to have a pair of reasonably fitted joggers, actually back then, this wasn't that common. Now we'll touch more on influencer marketing later on, but to say that influencer marketing has been important to the growth of Gymshark is a little bit like saying snow is important to skiing. Really, influencers are the DNA and I'd even say the backbone of Gymshark today. Here's another early Gymshark ambassador, a guy called Matt Ogus, again, wearing the joggers. The second important lesson is that in these early days, you don't see loads and loads of different Gymshark branded products because the minimum order quantity for these joggers and these tops, these tracksuits, was so high that Gymshark didn't have enough money to buy lots of other products. So they pretty much started with one main product, this Luxe tracksuit. Again, a really important lesson. What we've got here is a very clearly defined target audience of like late teens, early 20s bodybuilders. And we've got one product which we're selling to them, and the product is selling well and it's popular and people like it. So this is a very, very simple business at this stage. Now, obviously Gymshark's strategy has evolved a little since these pictures were taken in 2013. Wait, actually, no, it hasn't. They found a great formula and they've repeated it ever since, which is lesson number 2. From studying the very early days of Gymshark, it doesn't seem that the founders had necessarily a huge long-term vision for the brand because they ended up reversing a number of kind of micro decisions they made in these early days. But what it really seems to be is a genuine case of putting one foot in front of the other. They had a clear idea of their target audience, they had one product which was popular and they sold it, and they had really one marketing strategy to do that. And then they just kept repeating it and doing it over and over and over again. The marketing strategy was right, the audience was right, the product was right, the timing was right. Ben, the founder, understands this audience, but a whole lot of people have worked hard to get this to grow how it is. So let's break down this marketing strategy in a bit more detail. Now, first step to designing any marketing strategy is the target audience, because the target audience defines everything else that you do and what you sell. We've already said that Ben was the target audience for Gymshark, so he clearly understood this market very deeply. If we dig back into the time capsule that is the early days of the Gymshark Instagram feed, we can actually see this target audience very clearly. In fact, the brand started off clearly focused on males of a particular age. The first 90 Instagram posts feature only 3 pictures with women, and they're kind of from a male perspective, to be honest. This is pure 20-something bodybuilder bro culture. This is not all athletes, all ages, all genders. This is if you're a 20-something guy who goes to the gym a lot and aspires to be shredded like these guys, welcome, you've found your home. And that's why it resonated so well in the early days with people that were into this, because if you were into this, you were going to get a whole lot of it from Gymshark. And this is a really important point. Can you imagine trying to launch a company like Nike from scratch, working across all these different sports, all these different kind of segmented little audiences? It'd be really tricky to do, particularly if you're on a limited budget. So if you're on a limited budget and you're looking for insane growth, much better to focus on one very focused audience and give everything that you possibly can in that space. Now, the temptation when you're a small business starting up can be to kind of second guess yourself and try lots of different things. So we've worked with hundreds of small businesses at Exposure Ninja, and we'll often see that a small business owner will start off by selling one product to one audience. They'll then say, maybe we should try another product to that audience. Doesn't seem to be working. Let's try a slightly different audience. Let's try some more different marketing channels. Let's try this thing as well, because they might want to buy that too. And what we end up finding is that they're doing lots of different things in slightly different areas. And it means that energy is kind of distributed in lots of different directions. What we see on the other hand with Gymshark in the early days is that actually their energy has kind of gone in one direction. Now, the same amount of energy, therefore, can get you much further than if you're kind of spreading it around in lots of different directions. Now, of course, over time, it's important that the business expands out, adds a new product line, and that's exactly what we've seen Gymshark do. But most importantly, they've had this early traction to begin with, which has given them some leverage, and then they've started adding more product on. It's important to find something that works and then keep doing it. Don't get distracted and get pulled in another direction. What they've really done is they've found something that works and they've kept doing it rather than getting pulled in a different direction almost immediately. The first sign of a Gymshark women's range was 2013, although obviously it's been through many iterations to get to the sort of quality of product that we see today. But it's important to know that there was actually pent-up demand for this already. Because the brand has built up such a following amongst guy bodybuilders, it had inevitably attracted the attention of women as well. So there was actually people who were asking for Gymshark women's clothing. This wasn't them saying, right, let's just make everything all at once. So this wasn't Gymshark kind of forcing themselves into a new market. This was them responding to demand. Another key principle in the early days of Gymshark's growth is that they were selling something that people actually wanted. The importance of this can't be overstated. You can't get to this level of growth selling something that people don't want or just aren't fussed about. Life is so much easier if you don't have to ram your product down people's throats in order for them to want to buy it. Now, because people wanted this luxe tracksuit that they'd made, they started slightly expanding it out. You can see how they used their social media channels to test different colorways, for example. By doing this, they also kept the audience involved in the brand's growth. They were looking to their customers to tell them where to go next. This isn't being massively inventive. This is creating one product that people like and saying, hey, do you want it in a different color? Another really good decision that the Gymshark team made quite early on in the business is to change the logo. This is the original logo from 2012. This logo is really masculine, really aggressive, and clearly it's going to limit the brand's reach. So in 2014, they started transitioning to a new, more iconic and gender neutral logo. This logo is so much more flexible, and the original brief was to create something that was iconic as brands like Nike and Adidas. So we can also see how from the early days of Gymshark saying, right, we're just going to make gym clothing for bro bodybuilders and we want a logo which is like a big old muscly shark, we can see actually how the vision of the brand had started to expand now, because they wanted something which could sit alongside Nike and Adidas and look like it was part of that type of thing. Because they'd gone from wanting something which was like a big old muscly shark, which eliminates kind of 98% of the entire world's population, to actually something which they felt comfortable putting up against Nike and Adidas. So it shows how the vision grew even over the first couple of years at the company. This was a really important move, and it shows a kind of maturity that they're willing to move away from the things that have made them successful. What got us here won't get us there kind of mentality. But also there was a bit of a backlash. I mean, very minor backlash, but amongst some of the kind of hardcore bodybuilding people, they felt like the masculine, aggressive Gymshark logo actually kind of more represented what they were about. So here we see the brands starting to make decisions based on what's going to help us get to a much bigger end point. It's important to remember that Gymshark is an e-commerce business. You buy Gymshark's clothing through its website. You don't go to a sports shop. They don't sell through distributors. It's all done centrally. And like any e-commerce business, the website is central to its success. So let's take a look at how the website has evolved through the years. Now, Ben was actually building websites himself since he was about 16. So this is the first version of the Gymshark website, actually built kind of before Gymshark was properly founded. So here you can see they were selling supplements, but they're also selling clothing. This was not Gymshark clothing at this stage. Pretty poor looking website, but then this was 2011, so this was kind of de rigueur. It's actually not a bad looking site considering the age, but very simple. This is the very early days of Gymshark. So by 2012, this was the Gymshark site. They'd completely rebuilt it and were selling just clothing at this point. So different brands of clothing. We can see that Gymshark was just one of the brands that they were selling, as well as these other companies too. We can also see from this that the influencers started to take center stage. So right on the home screen, here we go. We've got pictures of recognized fitness influencers. Actually, we're not necessarily even seeing pictures of Gymshark clothing here. We're seeing influencers. And this starts a bit of a trend with Gymshark where they're actually focusing more on the influencers and the brand ambassadors than they are on their clothing. Now, Gymshark's troubles with their website, particularly in the early years, are very well documented. Any business that grows rapidly is inevitably going to suffer from some kind of bandwidth issue with their website, and Gymshark was no exception. The first version of the site was built on Shopify. They then moved over to Magento in 2013, before then later moving back to Shopify. But the Magento site from 2013, this was the look and feel here. Now, this is quite interesting because this is much more kind of traditional e-commerce layout at that point. We're starting to focus more on the product here, and you can see they're putting more attention behind the Gymshark brand. This is what's being featured most heavily. Also, interestingly, the product images here, they don't feature any people at all. These are almost like the sample images that they would have had from the brand. Very kind of corporate looking to me. This is a business that wants to look bigger than it is. The site is built with very strong consideration for mobile usability, which is quite forward thinking of the company. They clearly understood that their target audience was using phones a lot, and they built this into the site. Whilst today a mobile first e-commerce website is absolute de rigueur, back in these days that wasn't the case at all. By 2014, this was how the site looked. So we're going more back towards using some influencers in the images. We've got much better product photography. This is a much more accomplished website, but this site took a long time to build, and by the time it was actually finished, they'd already outgrown it. But we see here a real step up in sites. Now, what we're really looking at is we're looking at a business that at this stage is really only 2 years old, and they've already had 4 versions of their website. This shows how much they understood the importance of the website and the fact that they were relentlessly focusing on improving it and making it better. We see for the first time the use of kind of on-brand slogans, so challenge your limits, the future of fitness wear, and we see the Gymshark more iconic logo being used throughout, other than in the header, interestingly. What we're seeing is a brand evolving and becoming more confident in where it's going, as it should do, because by this stage the company was already very successful. Now, 2015 saw yet another iteration of the site. This one, again, kind of going full screen, very mobile focused, this kind of layout. This image looks like it was probably taken on the industrial park outside the office in Solihull. He looks a bit cold, but at this point, this was from November 2015, and November 2015 was a very important time. I'd imagine there's probably some PTSD from this time inside Gymshark, because this was Black Friday 2015, where the site crashed during the peak traffic times. Now, during the crash, they lost an estimated $143,000, and this was a real turning point for the company because it was the first time that they actually suffered a bit of a backlash from their fans. But they came out from it stronger, with Ben writing what's reported to be thousands of handwritten apology notes out to people. They sent out voucher codes, and really, whilst the website crashing because of demand feels really bad at the time, obviously when you go down to Asda on Black Friday and you're seeing people battering each other over the head to get TVs, you get that physical sense of demand, whereas with an e-commerce site, you might not get that sense. Well, for Gymshark, they definitely got that sense because the site was crashing and product was selling out. So the people in the Gymshark audience could see that, do you know what, this is really popular. And that conditions them in future to be very, very fast when they're purchasing, because they don't know how long the site's going to last. They don't know if the product's going to sell out. So whilst it's considered a kind of negative point for Gymshark, I'd actually consider that these sorts of things, these stories that the brand can tell its audience about how fast it's grown, are actually really useful. Now, moving on yet again to 2016 and 2017, the brand moved back to Shopify, this time using the Shopify Plus platform, and it's very clear that they're working very closely with Shopify. Shopify is extremely proud of the fact that they host Gymshark on their Shopify Plus platform. We can see that the site from this time has gone back to focusing very, very much on the influencers. Here we see a couple of their influencers, their ambassadors, wearing the Gymshark clothes. You know, yes, you can see the clothes, but really these images are all about the influencers. We also see the start of modern Gymshark brand color scheme. So lots and lots of gray backgrounds, a lot of the clothing's in grays and blacks as well. And really a lot of these images are kind of the precursors of what we see today's Gymshark site. So fast forward to today, we see a very modern fitness brand. The product images are stunning, all using very consistent image style. We've got the gray backgrounds, everything is really nicely lit. They clearly spend a lot of time and energy on getting these product images right. Now, in order to understand a little bit more about Gymshark's product image strategy and also how they use different types of product images in different locations around the world, I spoke recently to Daisy Pollard. Ready? So Daisy, looking at the old images of Gymshark and new images of Gymshark, what do you think they've learned in that 6 years?
That people matter. having people in their photos matter. You know, I've known Gymshark from Instagram, right? And everybody in LA is kind of wears Gymshark, but I know them from Instagram, and I know on Instagram they've always been image focused and influencer focused. They've had a very good influencer program and brand reps and so forth and so on. And so, but I had actually never been to their site, and seeing their old product photos on their site, it's just like, it's basically the mock-ups that come from the manufacturer. When you're actually picking your new releases, for example, they look just like this. It's just basically the illustrations, and oh my God, it doesn't sell. I think what really sold them was Instagram. I think that really added personality and personified their brand identity for sure, because this didn't do it at all. And now I love the fact that they've really stepped up their game, and they've got some, you know, models that know how to show the garments. They've got a personality, they've got a look to them, and that's everything. And they've got the depth of field and the background, so you know it's a real set. They've got real fitness models, so they really focused in on who their demo is. It's definitely the LA culture, and I don't know if all their sales come from Los Angeles, but you know, these are definitely like LA models, and they've got the LA look and the lifestyle, that year-round summer lifestyle. You know, it's really fantastic, and they've got even the accessories, so the props to lift some weights on your shoot. I'm looking at this one guy who's doing some shoulder exercises with some dumbbells, and that's really great. Yeah, I think they've come a long way. Yeah, definitely.
That's really interesting. I've just realized, because when I look at that link, I was like, where are the props? Where's the field? Because I'm seeing the UK ones. They've got different product images for UK and US, probably even
Wow.
in LA,
Yeah.
different product images.
Yeah, they do.
So they're
They
doing
probably
exactly
do.
what
Yeah.
you say. They've really understood their target audience, and they're giving me images of people that are British and you images of people that are Los Angelians.
Yes, they are. Yeah, they are.
Amazing.
And you know, fitness is a huge lifestyle here. And wow. And they even used a plus size guy. This is fantastic. I'll probably have to screenshot this to you, but they used plus size male model in a fitness outfit, and I think they learned a lot from like Fashion Nova and from all of the female direct to consumer brands, where they are really embracing plus size and body positivity is what we're calling it here. and not airbrushing out the stretch marks or rolls or things like that. And they've got this male model here, and he's, they're showing his stretch marks. They're showing him who he is. And I think that is so important to, the whole conversation of inclusivity and diversity, and especially in ads and advertising and marketing and media and stuff. It's a huge conversation here. So that's really impressive.
Love it. So your take on the 2013 Gymshark images is that they're probably selling despite these product photos rather than because of them.
Yeah, I think they were selling because of Instagram, honestly. They've got some really good, from the beginning, from day one, they had some really good fitness influencers that were really committed to the brand. And one of them I know was speaking about in the beginning how when she had started just around the time that Gymshark had also launched, and she said that in the beginning she was doing a lot of like booty photos, like basically showing her butt towards the camera, and her demographic was majority men, and she's like known as the queen of like home fitness, like home workouts, and on Instagram, and she had to change her image to really get more females to follow her and engage with her. And I think that had a lot to do with, my guess is it had a lot to do with her relationship with Gymshark and being able to sell fitness leggings that made women look good over Instagram. So I think I'm really impressed with that.
Awesome. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that when you go, I'm just looking at the Luxe hoodie and the Luxe bottoms, which were some of their breakout products right in the early days. And you're right, all of the images of those products on Instagram were pictures of the influencers wearing them. But then you get to the website and there's no influencers to be seen. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah. It's like the thing that's working, they haven't taken onto the website. Whereas nowadays you go on the site and it's all the same, isn't it? It's all consistent. The product images on the Gymshark site now are basically, I mean, even down to the color scheme and palette, they're pretty much what you would expect to see on the Gymshark Instagram channel. It's all really consistent.
Yeah, you know what I think this really says? I think in the beginning, starting a brand, you're really like fly by night, and you're doing so many things, and it takes a lot of thought and time and systems to get a brand to what we see Gymshark to be today. And back then in 2012, I think that they were just like kind of slinging it against the wall and trying to figure it out and just starting, right? And so a lot of times I like to tell people, it doesn't necessarily work in the economics of my best interest when I tell them, oh, just start. But in this case, like, but it's like, wow, it took them a couple of years to get it together, but they got it together, and it's impressive, and it's inspiring. This is really inspiring to see how far they've come and how consistent they've got, and they've got the channels in place, and we know they're selling.
They got it together very quickly. By 2014, which was kind of 2 years since it was started, the sorts of images on the site, different league. I'm going to show you another example. So I've just sent it on Skype. So this is 2014. So they've now got models in there. Some of the images on the header look closer to the sort of thing that they're using today, although the products are a little bit older.
Yes, I see. Yeah, wow. Yeah, and they've got the fitness models. Yeah, so wow. Yeah. That's, man, yeah, it's a big difference.
Big difference. So just start, but improve quickly.
Yes, just start, but improve quickly. Yes. Yeah, that's a dedication,
That is. They don't hang around. Cool. Awesome, Daisy. That's amazing. One thing that's really interesting though, well, if you're a geek like me, is Gymshark's Instagram engagement. Like many brand accounts, the engagement levels on Gymshark's Instagram are nowhere near as high as their audience, despite the fact they actually have a pretty big following. So here we can see the stats for Gymshark's main account. So we can see at the time of recording this, they've got 3.7 million followers, which has just had a massive spike actually, which is quite interesting. A 1.34% engagement rate. On average, their posts get around 50,000 likes and about 630 comments. Now, Gymshark have other accounts as well. So here's their Gymshark women's account, which has 2.46 million followers. And again, 1.74% engagement rate, so slightly higher than the men's one. Average likes are slightly lower and average comments are slightly lower. So what we're really seeing is that Gymshark women account is about 2/3 the size of the main account, and the engagement is about 2/3 the size as well. If we take a look at Nikki Blacketta, who is one of Gymshark's main ambassadors, she has 2 million followers, so fewer followers than either the Gymshark main or the Gymshark women's account. But the engagement rate, 3.59%, is much higher. So this is more than double both the Gymshark women's and the main Gymshark account in terms of engagement rate. So we have a much more engaged audience despite a smaller following. If we take a look at David Lade, so he's another Gymshark ambassador, 1.3 million followers. Engagement rate 9.2%, so like 6 times what the main Gymshark account gets, much higher. Many more likes as well, and loads more comments. So what we can see here, another individual who's got a much higher engagement than the main brand account. Finally, Steve Cook, 2.5 million followers. So Steve Cook's following is actually bigger than the Gymshark women's following. Engagement rate of 3%, so again, higher than both Gymshark and Gymshark women. Likes and comments, again, completely destroying what Gymshark itself gets. Again, we're building up this picture of the Gymshark influencers being the ones that get the engagement, and then Gymshark is essentially collecting all of this audience in one place. It's less engaged because the audience is really there for the influencers. So what do we kind of learn from this? Well, like the YouTube, like all the other stuff, Gymshark itself has a large audience, and that audience is primarily made up of the audiences for each of their individual influencers. So if we can extrapolate the engagement that Gymshark gets on the social channels as influence, what we see is that actually the individuals are more influential than the company. Personal brand still wins for connection. We connect more with people than we do with companies, and we probably always will. And this is why building the brand on the back of these influencers has been so vital for their success. They need these influencers to come along, keep content fresh, and to keep people coming back. So let's talk about Gymshark's Facebook strategy. Sheryl Sandberg, the chief operating officer of Facebook, once actually called out in a quarterly earnings call Gymshark as a particularly effective user of Facebook ads, and cited one of their Black Friday retargeting campaigns as something that was generating a 930% ROI. So we know that Gymshark uses Facebook ads, particularly around Black Friday. Now, it just so happens that I'm filming this video in the run-up to Black Friday, so I can show you exactly what they're doing this year with their Black Friday ad campaign. So we can see that they're running a whole range of different ads here. So we can see that these ones, for example, are running on Instagram. We can see that they also have a whole bunch of ads running on Facebook too, mostly video ads. So we've got this event which they've set up, and then we've got stills from a video which they've recorded, and they're running lots of different variations of this in different locations with different audiences. The other sorts of ads they're running are ads to their new app. Now, the app is a really interesting play for Gymshark. It's basically a workout planner, but it's designed to get Gymshark fans into the app so that Gymshark can then communicate to them and send them messages. So it's a way of taking them off the social channels, getting them in this one place where they're going to feed the influencers to the users, because all of the app content is the influencers, and it means that Gymshark then has ownership over that kind of interaction and can send them commercial messages as well. Let's talk about Gymshark's approach to search marketing. Using my favorite tool, SEMrush, which you can get a free trial of at thankyouninjas.com, we can see that overall there are 368,000 searches per month in the UK for Gymshark. If we have a look at the US, we see that goes up, obviously, because there's a lot more people in the US, to 550,000. So 368,000 in the UK and 550,000 in the US. Now, if we compare this to Nike, we can see that in the UK, Nike gets 1 million searches per month. And in the US, obviously, Nike gets more searches than Gymshark. But wait a second. Nike's only getting fewer than 3 times as many searches in the UK as Gymshark is. Let that sink in for a sec. Nike spends $3.73 billion with a B dollars a year on ads. They've been going a lot longer. They sponsor most of the biggest sports teams in the world. And in the UK, they get 3 times as many searches as Gymshark. And Gymshark only does gym clothing. Whoa mama. Now if we look at a legacy sportswear brand like Reebok, and legacy unfortunately these days means no longer relevant. Legacy sportswear brand like Reebok gets 90,500 searches a month in the UK, so Gymshark is spanking them into the ground. If we have a look at Puma, similar story. Gymshark is getting more than 3 times as many searches per month as Puma. This is crazy. This company is 7 years old. What? Now we see if we look at Google Trends that Gymshark stock is rising. So the company was founded in 2012. Things really started to get interesting after that trade show. You can see the steady rise through 2013, 2014. They've always been peaking around Black Friday because that's when they get the most attention. A lot of this will be people who already know Gymshark who are looking for the Black Friday sale. We can see another peak again in 2016 and again in 2017 and a huge peak in 2018. We had a peak in the summer in the UK. We're just about to hit Black Friday at the time of filming this, and we're going to see another peak again, which will probably outstrip the peak from 2018. So we can see the interest in Gymshark is rising. If we have a look at the different countries where there's most interest, we see that Norway is topping the list, possibly unsurprisingly. Ireland has a big contingent. A lot of the pop-up shops will be in places like Dublin, and in fact, actually, if we switch this to cities, this is really interesting because we actually see that the most interest for Gymshark tends to happen in cities where there has been a pop-up shop. So either they put the pop-ups in the place where they knew they were getting the most searches, or having a pop-up increases the number of searches in that city. So, okay, lots of people are searching for Gymshark. How are Gymshark capitalizing on all of this search volume? Well, as an absolute SEO geek, I've been following Gymshark's rankings for quite a while. And what we used to see was that they'd be ranking well for what we call branded terms. So people searching for Gymshark, obviously, Gymshark leggings, obviously, you know, the site is going to rank for that. This table allows us to see which phrases Gymshark is ranking for. And if we have a look at the different terms that Gymshark is ranking for, we see that a lot of these are Gymshark phrases. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to set up a filter which is going to take out any phrases that include Gymshark, because we'd expect Gymshark to rank for Gymshark phrases. And what we're going to do instead is we're going to analyze how Gymshark is ranking for non-branded phrases. So this all looks a bit horrendous if you're not used to it, but let me just talk through exactly what we're seeing. Down here on the left, we can see the different keyword that the site is ranking for. So if someone searches, for example, flex leggings on Google, that's where that comes from. That's a keyword. We can see next column is the position they're ranking. So position 1 means you're top of page 1 on Google. So you type it in, it's right there. Position 8 would be 8th on page 1. Position 11th would be 1st on page 2. Still with me? Next up, we see keyword search volume. So this is how many times this phrase is searched per month. So in this phrase here, we got the keyword gym booty shorts. I know I've searched for that many times. Position 1, so it's top of Google. That phrase is on average searched 140 times per month. And then this column tells us how much advertisers are willing to spend to advertise against that phrase. So this is a really interesting column because it gives us an indication of commercial intent. Usually a phrase that has a high cost per click means that advertisers are willing to spend more for that phrase because the people who are searching for that are going to be more profitable for them. So for example, we would expect to see a higher cost per click, for example, on a workout jacket than workout t-shirt, because a workout t-shirt is going to be cheaper, so there's less money to be made, whereas a jacket is more expensive, so usually more profitable, so people will typically spend more to advertise for that. Well, what we learned from this is that Gymshark's rankings have gone beyond just Gymshark phrases. They're now ranking for all sorts of things: workout hoodies, ribbon crop tops, best workout tanks. So these are what we call generic terms because there's no brand attached to them, and they're all got commercial intent. This is people that are usually looking to buy workout t-shirts, workout jackets, men's tanks, BCAA or creatine. We'll come back to this one in just a minute. So we can see that there are lots and lots of different useful phrases for Gymshark here. So we can see that the site is ranking for lots of useful terms here. These are all relevant to Gymshark, and this is likely going to be bringing them in a lot of unbranded traffic. So we can see that Gymshark's ranking pretty well for a lot of unbranded gym-related terms that have commercial intent. So what do we mean by that? We mean unbranded as in people aren't looking for Gymshark. They don't have a brand attached to their search yet, so they're great potential Gymshark customers. Commercial intent means that usually they're looking to buy, and their relevance, they're actually looking for the sorts of things that Gymshark sells. This is evidence that Gymshark has improved its SEO, where they're t-shirt intentionally, but they're actually doing pretty well here. And the best opportunity for Gymshark now to expand their audience outside people that already know the company is to rank for these generic terms. So over time, I'd love to see Gymshark ranking number 1 for stuff like women's leggings. I think that'd be a massive play for them because it would bring visibility to a whole bunch of people that don't go into a gym even, but are like, oh, these are cool, I'm gonna get them. And then we can start to expand outside the gym. Now, I promised you we'd come back to the BCAA and glutamine thing in just a second, and I'm not one to tease, so let's have a look at what's going on here. So BCAA and glutamine are both workout supplements, and if we have a look at the page that is ranking on the Gymshark website for this search term, we can see they've got this blog post which is comparing BCAA versus glutamine. Someone at Gymshark has written this post, they've researched it and put it on the Gymshark website. Why would they do that? They don't sell either of these supplements. Well, the reason that they would do this is because somebody who is searching for BCAA versus glutamine is someone who is fairly serious about working out, but they don't know everything that there is to know. In other words, they're a perfect Gymshark customer. They might be at the start of their fitness journey, but they're starting to take things a bit more seriously. So Gymshark's play here will be to get these people onto the site, because if you're on the site, you're a relevant potential customer for Gymshark, and then get them through onto the Gymshark website so they can start looking and purchasing. Now, Gymshark is also pixeling every single visitor that comes to this page using the Facebook pixel. So this means that they can then run ads to you later on Facebook. So they're basically building an audience of people that are coming to these blog posts, and if they choose to, they can run ads against that audience. So they basically now know that I go to the gym and I'm interested in this stuff, so they can run ads to me, and that's much better than just running ads to the general population who might not even be a relevant audience for them. So why is the Gymshark site ranking so well? Well, if we have a look at one of their pages, for example, this workout hoodies page, just as an example, one of the reasons why the site will be ranking so well is that actually it's pretty easy to use and it's got some fairly good content. You see, even though this is a commercial page, this is for people that are wanting to look at hoodies, they've still got a bit of text here saying men's gym hoodies, and then they've got a bit of information here about how it all works with links through to some product category pages. This really helps to give Google an indication about what this page is about, which is going to help ranking. Another part of the reason that Gymshark's site is ranking so well is going to be their link profile. Now, when Google is deciding which website to rank, one of the things it looks at is the links pointing at that site. And links are kind of its measure of authority. So we use this tool called the Link Explorer from Moz, and it just allows us to have a look at the different links pointing at the Gymshark website. So here are the different links pointing at the Gymshark site. We can see that there's lots of links from YouTube, from Gymshark's different influencers. We can see also that there are links from sites like the BBC talking about Ben's story. We can see this is another link from YouTube. This is from a Nikki Blacketta video. Nikki is one of their ambassadors. We can see loads and loads and loads of links from YouTube. We can see links from Reddit. We can see links from lots and lots of links from YouTube. And we can see links from sites like this, which is The Independent, which is a newspaper site. Basically, Gymshark gets three different types of links. The first type of links are from their influencers. This is the biggest number of links that they have. First type of links is links from their ambassadors and other influencers. This is the largest percentage of their total link profile. And this is people making a YouTube video like, for example, this one, where Nikki's talking about Game of Thrones, so nothing related to Gymshark, but in her video description, she defaults to linking to her Gymshark shop because she gets an affiliate commission or she gets some kind of reward for sending people through to the shop. So that's the first type of link that they get. The second type of link that they get are links like this, where it's roundups, where they're featuring Gymshark products. So these are really good, and these are picked up, I suspect these are probably picked up organically. These companies, the writers that write these pieces will pick up and link to Gymshark because they already know about Gymshark. There is a chance that they're doing some kind of paid promotion, but I think probably at this stage it's unlikely. And then the third type of links are links like this. So this is all about Ben, about the story of Gymshark and about the growth. And they are picking up a lot of links from this type of thing. Now that the Gymshark story is a real thing and it's got its own traction, it's a kind of perpetuating cycle, because the bigger Gymshark gets, the more people write about them, which helps them get bigger, which helps more people write about them, and it kind of cycles and cycles. So are they doing any SEO? Now, because they're getting so many of all three of these different types of links, I think it's unlikely that they're paying to do any kind of link building work. And even if they are paying to do any kind of link building work, it's probably having a negligible impact because the amount of links that they're picking up naturally is so high. So what about Google Ads? Well, you notice that when you type something into Google, for example, here I've just typed shoulder workouts, you'll sometimes see adverts coming up. For example, this one here from Gymshark. Hold on, why is Gymshark advertising against shoulder workouts? We'll come back to that in a second. Now, doing a bit of research into Gymshark's Google Ads just gives us a really clear indication of how much they want to own the influencers that they work with. So we're just going to head over to the US for a second. And on this screen, we're having a look at the Google Ads that Gymshark is running in the US, so we can see the different keywords that they're advertising against. So for example, hoodies for men, we can see where that advert is being shown. And if we hover over this, we can actually see the ad that they are running as well. But we're not going to worry about that too much. What we're really looking at now is what sort of phrases, what keywords are they targeting with their ads. So we can see that actually they're being pretty bold here. A phrase like hoodies for men is a potentially dangerous phrase to be targeting, because just because I'm looking for a hoodie doesn't mean I'm like a gym goer. It doesn't mean I'm looking for a gym hoodie. This shows to me the level of aggression and confidence that Gymshark is pushing forward with. If they're willing to advertise for such a generic term like that, which has a huge search volume, so 110,000 searches a month, and healthy cost per click, so they're probably spending 20, 30 grand a month just targeting that phrase, but they might not even convert these people into customers if they're not looking for gym stuff. It shows two things to me. Firstly, it shows confidence, but secondly, it shows me how much Gymshark is willing to spend to acquire a new customer. Because what I suspect is happening is that once someone comes into the Gymshark world and they enter into the portal, they buy their first piece of clothing, they then see all the ads, they then become familiar with all the influencers that Gymshark has, and they get kind of sucked into this world and become a bit of an advocate. That person is then really profitable to Gymshark over time, so they're willing to invest and go quite outside the box and fairly broad in order to get new people coming along. Either that or they're just really trigger happy with their Google ads. But the other thing that's really interesting is going back to these influencers. So here we can see them advertising for phrases like Demi Bagby, Whitney Simmons, David Lade. They're advertising against Nikki Blackketter. They're advertising against Steve Cook. What's going on here? In the US, when you search for Steve Cook, Nikki Blackketter, David Lade, Whitney Simmons, who do you see advertising? It's not these people, it's Gymshark. Well, they want you to come to the Gymshark website, and what they've done is they've got individual pages for each of their athletes, which allows them to either run ads to these pages, or what they're really trying to do is get these pages ranking so that when you search for Robin Gallant, you come to Robin's page on the Gymshark website. And of course, when they come to the page, they see all the pictures of these people in the Gymshark clothing. And now they've got you on the site and they can push you through to their product pages. The influencers are the brand. Okay, so back over to the UK for a second, because I want to show you something else. Not only are they targeting the broadest possible phrases like sportswear, men's shorts, sports clothing, which are super, super broad, but we're also starting to see a new strategy come through where they're actually targeting phrases like shoulder workout, back exercises, shoulder exercises, back workouts, chest exercises. What are they doing here? Well, if we head over and have a look, if we type in shoulder workouts, what do we get? Well, we get to the Gymshark page where they're going to give us some shoulder workouts. And of course, we've got influencers here wearing Gymshark clothing. So why are they doing this? Well, they're pixeling everyone who comes to this site, which means the website is dropping a cookie on my computer now so that Gymshark knows I'm interested in shoulder workouts. I've come onto the site and they can now run Facebook ads and Google ads or whatever ads they want to run to me because they've pixeled me. So that is why I suspect they're doing this thing, because actually they're not trying that hard to get me through to product pages on the Gymshark website. All they're really trying to do is get me on the site in the first place, which makes me think that they're probably pixeling me so that they can then run ads to me knowing that I'm a gym goer and therefore I'm a qualified potential Gymshark customer. It's bold, it's aggressive, and I love it. So those are the main channels that Gymshark is using. Obviously there's other stuff going on. We've got things like Snapchat, we've got Pinterest, we've got email marketing. I didn't have time to cover absolutely everything in this video. You've been watching long enough. It's about time you went to the gym. But before we go, I wanted to talk about future growth opportunities. You see, Gymshark is getting to a point now where its size and the speed of growth is actually pretty unprecedented in a brand that's focusing purely on one particular sport, i.e. going to the gym. We can see Gymshark reaching further into this market by doing things like bringing out the workouts app. So what are they doing there? Well, they're trying to collect anybody who's interested in going to the gym into an app so that they can advertise them or just basically slowly indoctrinate them into the Gymshark world of influencers. We also see them moving further into their influencers audiences by doing things like running these public playlists on Spotify where you find your favorite influencer and there's their playlist on Spotify, so you can listen to the same music that they're listening to as well. One thing that I think will be really interesting for them is moving into influencers that aren't just pure fitness influencers. So here we see them sponsoring an influencer called Sensor. Now, he's a Call of Duty gamer initially, but obviously has transitioned into the world of fitness. And I think this is really interesting because for a lot of people now, fitness isn't necessarily their main interest. For a lot of this kind of younger generation, actually fitness is just like the operating system for life. It's just one of the default interests that everybody has, and they overlay their personality on top of that. So here we can see a guy that maybe they wouldn't have traditionally gone after. He's in good shape, but he's not like the other influencers that Gymshark has, which are just pure fitness. He's got a large gaming audience. So I wonder if this is Gymshark trying to reach into the gaming audience, realizing that actually they're kind of running out of pure fitness influencers that have the sort of size audience that they could really go after. Now, there is a potential vulnerability, although I'm not sure it's right to call it a vulnerability, which is basically what we've seen throughout, which is Gymshark is so reliant on its influencers to bring in new audience members that actually if something significant were to change between the brand influencer relationship, for example, you know, we saw legislation come in recently which required influencers to label their posts as ads. If some crazy legislation came in that said influencers weren't allowed to work with brands or something, you know, totally ridiculous like that, Gymshark could potentially be in trouble. Obviously, that's a very, very small percentage chance. And I think also Gymshark has broadened its influencer base out so that it's not reliant on any one or two or even a group of particular people. And of course, there are always going to be new influencers coming through in the scene. But nevertheless, the risks are there. If these influencers start clubbing together to build their own brand, or, you know, there's a story that leaks about widespread steroid usage or something like this, which damages the clean-cut perception of Gymshark, there are vulnerabilities in this pure influencer marketing strategy because at the end of the day, they don't control those assets. But obviously, this takes nothing away from what an incredible growth story the Gymshark journey has been up to now. One thing I think we'll see Gymshark doing more of is tapping into influencers that aren't just in the fitness space. For many people, particularly in the younger generation coming up, their fitness isn't like their whole identity, it's just part of the operating system of their life. And they then have other interests which they kind of overlay and consider to be their primary interests. So Gymshark work with a guy called Sensor, who is really, he's a Call of Duty gamer who kind of moved a bit further into the fitness industry. So I think this is really interesting because obviously they're working with him because he has a large audience. That audience isn't primarily there to follow him for fitness reasons, they're there to follow him for gaming reasons. But I think this could be a really interesting angle that Gymshark take, tapping into influencers that have a big audience outside of fitness when fitness is only one of the things that person is known for. And I guess that's one of the challenges Gymshark is going to face as it continues to grow and as it tries to maintain this insane level of growth. It's actually going to run out of influencers in the fitness space. So what about vulnerabilities to this way of growing? Well, as we've seen, Gymshark does the best when it puts the influencers front and center. When it tries to go front and center itself, it finds it a little bit harder to get traction. Isn't necessarily an issue as long as there's always a steady stream of influencers to come through and essentially be the face of the brand. Where this could potentially be an issue is if the nature of the influencer brand relationship changes for some reason. So in the grand scheme of things, influencers are a fairly new thing. We saw how adding a hashtag ad was brought in by authorities to kind of make the brand influencer relationship a little bit better known. If there was some other piece of legislation or rule that came in that either required influencers to specifically state their commercial relationship with the brand or potentially even stop working with brands, right, which would be obviously really extreme and extremely unlikely, but something like that could interfere with Gymshark's growth model so far. Other vulnerabilities would be, groups of influencers combining to start their own brands instead, or potentially some kind of scandal which comes throughout the influencer industry, something about steroid usage or something like that. I mean, all of these things are fairly unlikely to disrupt the Gymshark brand, but it's just part of that vulnerability that you have when you don't fully own those marketing assets as they are. Obviously, none of this is to take away Gymshark's insane growth. This has been, like I said right at the start, this has been one of the most incredible growth stories of our generation, and all of the stats show that Gymshark is not done yet. There's plenty more growth to be had. Okay, key takeaways. What can we learn, whatever we sell, from the Gymshark story? First thing is that people can look at the Gymshark story and say, yeah, it's all influencer marketing, and that's all they really did. Well, it's not technically true. I mean, the main thing that I think Gymshark have got really right consistently is product market fit. Sorry, that was a bit David Brent, wasn't it? They understand their target audience really well, and they understand their product really well, and they build stuff that they know that target audience is really gonna like. Synergy. You can't outmarket a bad product or non-existent demand. Let me say that again. You can't outmarket a bad product or non-existent demand. You have to have something that people want, and you have to sell it to the people that want it. Gymshark's product isn't revolutionary by any means, but it is something that people need. You need to wear clothes in the gym. Boring, right? But you need to. And what about the lessons for Gymshark's own influencer marketing work, which really has kind of redefined the space? Well, we've seen how Gymshark doesn't sell its product and attach influencers. Gymshark actually takes the opposite approach and basically just collects the influencers and then sells the influencers back to their audiences with product attached. It's the complete opposite approach. As I was researching this, I was trying to work out why is it that so few consumer-facing brands that work with influencers haven't taken this approach to give the influencers so much power. And I think really it comes down to fear. Fear that giving the influencers too much power will over-empower them, so they go and start their own brands and do other things and demand more money, and probably also fear of not owning that brand to fan relationship. Gymshark is essentially standing in the background while Steve Cook sells Gymshark to his fans. And if you're not confident in the power of the brand and your relationship with that influencer, that's a really risky thing to do. But if I had to sum up Gymshark's success story so far, I'd like to sum it up with this, which I'll end on. Now, this is something posted by a 19-year-old personal trainer on Medium. This guy's called Adam Peeler. Wait, 19-year-old into fitness? We've come full circle. That's Ben Francis. Now, Adam wrote this on Medium despite having no connection to Gymshark, and to me, it typifies the place that Gymshark holds in its followers' hearts. Let me get a drink before I read this one. I stumbled across Gymshark because I liked their clothes. That was it. I thought they looked cool and I wanted to have them. Since then, it's grown to be more than that. It's grown to be how I live my life. Like a visionary. I wake up every day now with purpose and meaning and drive to do things differently and become better at what I do and create the type of life I want to live. It has become part of my identity. When I wear a shirt from Gymshark, I'm telling myself and others, I'm different. I'm going to change the world someday. That's powerful. That's motivating. And guess what? It's exactly what I plan to do. We all have abilities, we all have potential. The fact of the matter is that you have to work for it. You have to do things outside of the box sometimes and be okay with being weird for a little bit. To me, any brand that can motivate such emotion from their target audience, they're really onto something. You heard it here first, folks. I think this Gymshark thing might be big one day. I mean, assuming that quote was legit, by the way. It's all well and good talking about Gymshark's growth and how amazing their marketing is, but what about your business? Well, if you need some help with your digital marketing, then my company, Exposure Ninja, is here to help. We've been a part of some ridiculous case studies for our clients. Not quite on Gymshark's level yet, but we've taken businesses from $500 a month to over $3 million a month with our SEO and content marketing. We've helped businesses generate 15 times their return on investment through pay-per-click ads, and we've helped them convert a lot more leads and sales through their websites. If you're interested in some free help from Exposure Ninja, then just go to exposureninja.com and request a free website and marketing review. When you do this, one of our team will create a custom video specially for you, showing you how to generate more leads and sales through your website. They'll show you how to improve its performance and get more traffic through things like Google and social media. This free review is completely free of charge. There's no obligation to use our services at all, and it is genuinely awesome. We have hundreds of 5-star reviews for this service, and there's absolutely no catch whatsoever. So go to exposureninja.com to request your free website and marketing review today.